right, we're live.
We're live. All right.
Ooh.
Hello, hello, hello. And welcome to the first episode of The 12, the newest show under the Shades of Blue network. This is a show about the Women's Super League, the highest division of women's football in England. We're here to discuss all things WSL, both on and off the field. And each week we'll be breaking down games, showcasing stars, and highlighting important stories surrounding the game. My name is Deepti, and I'm here with my co-hosts Marc, Thom Bomb, and Treb, and we're also excited to be doing this. How you guys feeling?
I'm so
Good.
excited.
Hot, ready, excited, all of those things.
Good.
Same. Excited for this season. Excited to be doing this with you guys. Just lots of excitement overall.
Awesome. Before we jump into content, let's all introduce ourselves. Just like name, kind of who we support, how we got into the sport. Thom, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Thom. People know me as Thom Bomb. I'm one of the original 5 from Shades of Blue. I also been doing some work with Shea Butter FC, covering Kansas City Current. I am obviously a City fan. I think it was kind of logical once So first of all, I think that I've loved women's football since 1999. I'm kind of old, so the 99ers meant a lot to me, especially as an American. So when it was apparent that the Premier League team that I supported had a women's team, I was all about it. So I just kind of jumped all in on that and haven't really looked back. And I'm just so excited that they're going to new places and doing things that they haven't done in a while. Maybe, but that's just based off of Champions League reformatting. Yeah, I am the resident City fan on the pod.
Nice. Is it my turn? Me? Yes.
Go for it.
My name is Treb Tracy. I go by Treb. I am the managing editor and senior writer for Angels on Parade, typically covering NWSL and Angel City, as well as MLS on the men's side. I am an Arsenal fan, so I am one of, I think, 2 Arsenal fans on the pod. I started out in 97, supporting the men's side. And obviously, growing up in America, I knew about women's soccer here. But as I kind of got older and just more into European soccer, like Thom, I found out, okay, my men's team also has a women's side, and immediately fell in love with them. Players like Rachel Yankee, and then of course like seeing Alex Scott go from, young starlet to now doing everything in broadcasting makes me feel really old. But I've been supporting Arsenal basically my whole life, so get ready for that agenda all season.
My name is Marc Nicholls. In terms of other projects I've done for the culture, I've also done Atlanta United Fan TV. This would be my first thing that's specifically, based in women's football. So excited about that. I was born in Trinidad. I moved to the U.S. When I was 11 in the year 2000. Thom mentioned the 99ers. That summer I just happened to be in the U.S. and I ended up watching that final with family. In a lot of ways, that left a lasting impression on me. I did eventually get into soccer, I would say to the 2006 World Cup, and then eventually decided to support Chelsea. And I would say probably around 2017, 2018 is when I started following the women. Shout out to the FA player. I'm sure we're all FA player veterans here.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to the homie. Pour one out for him.
Listen, they helped us get here. You did what you had to do. I am so glad it's moving over to YouTube though. But yeah, it's, I think, being a Chelsea fan, obviously it's fun for obvious reasons, right? Like just the success, but also like being able to support a club that's managed by an icon like Emma Hayes. And then I just feel so lucky that she's now the U.S. Women's National Team manager. But like I said before, I'm definitely excited about this season. And just excited about the direction of the league overall.
Nice. And my name is Deepti. I am probably one of the latest to the game when it comes to women's soccer, but I initially started following the U.S. Women's National Team. I'd say like the 2011 World Cup is kind of where it started. But even then, I really only watched the Olympics or the World Cup. I didn't really watch the domestic league until quite recently. I guess now it's been 6 years, but 2018. 2019 World Cup really solidified it, and specifically the final and watching the Dutch team make it all the way to the final. I fell in love with some of the Dutch players, Viv Miedema, Dan van de Donk, Palova, who all happened to be on Arsenal at that time. So I was like, you know what, that's going to be my team. So yeah, I support Arsenal, became an Arsenal women's fan before I then adopted the men, and I love them both. And I'm currently based in London, so that's been a really exciting time, and I'm hoping to go see as many games as I can as long as I'm out here. Yeah, very excited for this, excited for how the league's growing, excited for the new Champions League format, excited for everything that's happening around women's football right now.
You can be our boots on the ground over there.
Yes, hopefully.
That's going to be exciting. Oh my gosh.
Especially, yeah, all the games are, well, I think they have 8 games at the Emirates this season, which is really cool. Hopefully sellouts every time. Great atmosphere. Awesome. Okay, so real quick, well, like we said, the name of our podcast is The 12. And I guess we'll give like a little bit of why we're called that. 2 main reasons, I would say. Number one is there's 12 teams in the league. So that was kind of the main idea behind calling this the 12. But then also the second and I think more interesting aspect is that this concept of the 12th man and 12th woman, who's like the fan base of each team. There's 11 players on the pitch for each team, but the 12th man or 12th woman would be the fans. And like having home advantage, having the fans backing you up is such a big thing that it really can feel like an extra player and extra support out there. So we thought the 12 would fit really well. It kind of shows that we're going to talk about things both on and off the pitch and cover as much as we can about this league. All right. So this week, we want to go back to the basics, mostly for those of you who are new to football, new to women's football, or just the WSL. We want to give a quick overview of the league and how it works. So with that, does someone want to give a rundown of the 12 teams that exist in the league?
Sure. So we have our reigning defending champions, Chelsea. The reigning defending champions, Chelsea, Manchester City, Arsenal, Manchester United, West Ham, Aston Villa, Brighton Hove Albion, Everton, Tottenham Hotspur, Liverpool, Leicester City, and the newest addition for this year is Crystal Palace.
Nice.
And I do have to say that London is very, very well represented in the WSL. Like 1, 2, 3, 4 teams, like 4 at least.
Yeah, we got Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, West Ham,
And then Palace.
and then
Palace. So
Crystal
that's 5.
Palace.
Palace,
Yep,
yeah.
we got 5. Yeah, the newest one is
Welcome,
also on there.
Palace.
So.
We'll be going over that later, the whole relegation promotion.
Indeed. But yeah, almost half the teams, which is kind of crazy. All right. So, okay. So, like we said, there's 12 teams. They will each play 22 games. They'll play each team at home and away. And there's no playoffs in the league. And so, in order to win the league, you need to accumulate the most number of points. Mark, you want to explain the point system?
Sure. And so you get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, obviously 0 points for a loss. Also, you mentioned obviously, in most seasons, you'd have the complete season, and then it would be decided by points, and then the first tiebreaker would be goal difference, and I think the next one would be goals scored. We had an unusual situation in 2019-2020. Of course, that league was cut short, and they didn't actually resume it. So I think Chelsea won on, what would you call that, points per game to whatever point the season was completed. But yes, as Deepti mentioned, it would be decided by total points. And then, as I mentioned, if there's a tie, then you have your tiebreakers. First one being goal difference.
Right.
That'll probably be the biggest difference for, like, especially newer American fans, is the no playoff system. I think obviously as watchers of NWSL, you get used to kind of watching the table in terms of seeding and judging it that way. Whereas in the WSL, it's very much going to be, you're going to be watching that table in terms of who's coming away with the trophy at the end. So that, I think, is going to be, I think that's part of the excitement in terms of, like, when you get a new fan watching the league, it's that kind of shift from playing for the playoffs and playing through the season in terms of, like, this is what matters the most.
Right. And it really emphasizes how that, like, each game really matters and trying to get a win, not necessarily just a draw.
Right.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think last season was the first time a team won the league with 3 losses. I think before that it was just it was under 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, like every game counts. And so a lot of times it comes down to the last match day or last couple match days, but sometimes if a team's on a run, you might know earlier in the season who is going to take that trophy. But that's what makes it exciting.
And there's not necessarily playoff places, but there are other considerations. So the top 3 teams then qualify for next season's Champions League. So this year's Champions League participants are Chelsea, Man City, and Arsenal.
We're all well represented.
Yes. And I do think that's actually a fair reflection of who we expect to be competing for the title, most likely, right? Who we think probably the best teams are in the league as things currently stand. So but yeah, it'll be interesting to see if, like, for example, a Manchester United or Liverpool can compete for European places. And then on the flip side, you have I don't know if I'm jumping into the promotion relegation discussion too soon, but
no, good segue, go for it.
Yeah, and so it's one team that gets relegated, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the last season, that was Bristol City. They last season they took some heavy losses. One of the more notable ones was towards the end of the season where they faced Chelsea. Chelsea were able to make up, I think it was a goal difference.
It was 6 goals. It was 8 goals. They made up 8 goals in a match. I want to talk about it.
Yeah, that was
actually crazy.
That was fun. Yeah. That's some WSL lore for our new audience. But so obviously Bristol City got relegated. The new team this year is Crystal Palace. Something I didn't get a chance to look up. I'm curious if, how competitive the relegation race has been. And, I think that's something, I think if you're used to like an NWSL where there's a bit more parity, right? In WSL, there are teams that are there. You notice a gap in quality sometimes, right? And so now, as the WSL and the leagues in England continue to develop, like for example, we have Michelle Kang who invested in London City Lionesses, who are in the second division as things currently stand. But maybe in the next couple of years they come up and they're actually a competitive team. To be interesting to see how the quality develops from the bottom end of the table as well. So I'm curious to see how Crystal Palace compete in the league this year. But yeah, generally speaking, the teams that come up are favorites to go back down. But we'll see if that starts to change this season.
I think it will. I mean, like, obviously we'll talk about it more throughout the season, but I think Palace coming in is a sign of the new era. Because like you said, a lot of times the teams coming in often are the teams going right back out. And a lot of times the teams at the bottom of the WSL are teams that unfortunately haven't invested properly in their women's side and just don't have that level of care or desire, similar to a big club in the area is the same way. But a lot of times you see it in the smaller clubs and they usually just a revolving door. But I think with Palace coming in, they're a team that right now, I think, from what I understand, is a club that is supporting their women's side and kind of giving investment where they can, because they're still a relatively small club on the global scale. So, but I think them coming in this year, I think they have a chance to really make some noise and make that kind of battle in the championship matter even more. I hate comparing the two, but like you want to make that battle matter similar to the way it does on the men's side, where it's like, yeah, you want that second division just as competitive as the top division, because I think iron sharpens iron and it just makes everybody better. But that's kind of my hope for the year, is that we see Palace signify a change in what we've come to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I also like to your point of sometimes the men's team doesn't put enough investment into their women's side. I think it's somewhat interesting comparing which like Premier League teams have these women's teams and how well the women's teams are doing relative to maybe their men's side. And then I think you can really tell, like, we might get into this later, we probably will, but Manchester United, for example, their men's side are having renovations or something done to their training ground, and so they're taking over the women's training ground and having the women go to a portable training area and basically just kicking them out of their place. And so it's clear that like Manchester United favors the men, even though arguably the women have a better chance of doing better in the league at some points, especially I
Right
feel
now
like the
they
last
did.
couple
Well, they
seasons.
did. Yeah.
The last couple of seasons. We'll see now, but I think that's something to keep an eye on also throughout the season and over the next few years, is kind of seeing both sides, like both men's and women's, how they do relative to each other.
Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about it, because just a sneak preview as to the next episode, we'll be getting into transfers, and I'm almost certain the reasons for a certain exodus at a certain club is happening is because they are not treating that team with the level of respect and care that it is honestly earned. Because let's be real, United has been a club, despite not having won a lot, they've been a club that's been able to draw some of the biggest names in women's soccer to that club. And to then not do anything with that talent in terms of on-pitch success and even off-pitch kind of marketing, promoting, branding success, like that's a huge problem. But yeah, it's something we'll definitely get into as the season unfolds for sure.
Yeah. Well, also the league, besides just the league games, there are other trophies to compete for. This is something I think, like, if you're used to the NWSL, it's a more recent thing in the NWSL to have kind of domestic cups. Whereas it's fairly common in European soccer. And in the Women's League, there are 2 domestic cups. One is the FA Cup, and then the other one is the League Cup. The main difference, I think, is just how many teams are eligible to compete in it. So the FA Cup really takes teams from every tier, I believe, from the WSL, which is the top tier, all the way down to 7th tier. There's different rounds, and different tiers enter in different rounds depending on how high on the pyramid they are. And then the other domestic cup is the League Cup, which only has teams from the WSL and the Championship, which is the 2nd division. So a much smaller competition. But to Treb's point, what he was saying before about how iron sharpens iron, that is something that moving forward could potentially be a very exciting, like a more exciting cup if teams from both leagues get more of that parity. And like more competition between 1st and 2nd division, which ideally shouldn't have that much difference in like talent quality.
Yeah.
Well, with an owner like Michelle Kane coming in, they'll definitely be forced to change and get ready to compete, or we'll see London City just kind of run through that championship real quick.
Yeah, I think that's the expectation, given how much she's put into it. What
that's true. She does own like 7 clubs, so like it depends on how much. But but the theory is, in theory, we should see them kind of do what Washington Spirit did, her NWSL side, which was kind of go from middling to now a legit contender consistently. So
yeah,
I think I like the aspect of having the separate cups, just having another competition, and then it's tournament style, so it's more like a playoff, like American fans would be used to, and it's just another opportunity to win trophies. I mean, Chelsea would have been favorites to win those trophies, but they lost to Arsenal in the Continental Cup semifinal, I think it was, and then they lost to Man U in the FA Cup semifinal. So it's just that element of jeopardy you get with a knockout match. Like, anything can happen. So I think it's definitely competitions worth paying attention to, as well as the league.
And it's a Champions League. Like, who doesn't love Champions League football? I mean, I personally love Champions League football. And on the women's side, it's definitely been a lot kinder to Arsenal than on the other side, as we are still the only English club to have hoisted the trophy. So we'll be looking to repeat it this year, because despite the dynasty Chelsea failed to, it's okay. But we'll be looking to restore glory to English football. Don't worry, guys. Let it begin. This is what this podcast is really going to be. It's going to be. Everyone is being nice now. I'm telling everybody out there right now, when the season starts, understand it's going to get spicy. So I'm just preparing people.
This is just a pilot episode where we introduce the character.
Everyone is like happy and there's no drama, and then like episode 2 hits and it's just like favorite son goes to jail. Oh my gosh. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it's gonna be, like that,
No,
Except
just wait for week
Arsenal,
1. Yeah, exactly.
Week 1's gonna be wild. Just go ahead, everybody. If you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening right now, just go ahead and type in your Google search FAWSL schedule, and then just look at the first match and remember who we all said our teams were. And then you'll realize why week 1 banger.
Indeed.
Oh, wow.
He's like, let me actually do that. Let me actually pull up the schedule.
I didn't know that. That's fun.
Oh, yeah. It's real. Mm-hmm. It's real fun. Mm-hmm. It's going to be real fun.
Especially since both
we'll
teams,
get to that.
And both teams have Champions League matches before that.
We'll talk about Deepti's right. We'll talk about all that. This is supposed to be the educational episode. The easy one,
why don't Thom, go ahead and you can discuss the new format for Champions League. This is the international cup that teams play.
So all of the UEFA identifying countries that have top tier women's football will all participate in the Champions League, and it depends on your coefficient for the league. So for the WSL, just because as a whole, for the past, I don't know, 4 years, the WSL has not performed very well in the Champions League. I mean, I can tell you that City has not qualified for a group in many a moon. And I think that Arsenal has been knocked out in the group stage. Chelsea, Mark, they got to the semis last year. Yes.
Yeah, I think the last couple years. Yeah.
So their coefficient was a little bit lower than some of the other larger leagues, say like D1 Arkema in France or Liga F in Spain. So we'll have so we've had several matches, and it usually has been like the third place team in a lot of the bigger leagues, like the ones I just mentioned. They were playing champions of smaller leagues. So, for example, like a Slavia Praha or a Sparta Praha, something like that. And then the second place teams have come on in the league qualifiers. So they will play. It's 24 teams, 12 total matches, play a home and home. And then those 12 participants will then join the champions of the top 6 leagues, I believe. And then they will, or no, I think it's 24 because it's 6 groups. So it'll be, they'll join another group of 12 teams, and then they'll be divided into groups. And then those groups, you'll play a home and home, and the top 2 finishers on points will advance to the knockout stages as we know them. So like a proper bracket as us Americans would know it as. So yeah, it's very interesting. Arsenal played as the third place team in WSL last season. They've already played 2 matches. Who you played? Rosenborg and whom else?
Yeah.
Who was the other team that you played before?
Yeah, Rosenborg was the most recent. Arsenal won 1-0, and then we played Rangers from Scotland for the first match, 6-0, I believe.
Yes.
This year is a little bit different because for the qualifying stage, it was still kind of not knockout round, but you were in a group of sorts, and it was just play 2 games to move on to round 2, and then again they'll play. Now in round 2, you'll play home and away against just the one team, and then if you win that tie, move on to the group stage. Whereas I believe in previous years it was just single elimination for the first qualifying rounds.
Yep,
it was.
That's how Paris went on their run at the expense of Arsenal last season.
Yeah.
So they got in on that one and done.
Right. City drew Paris FC, right?
Yeah,
we did.
I'm hoping magic repeats itself. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie.
I'm sure you would. I think I said Crunk and I had the privilege of being on with the guys from In the Channel last night, and I think I said that Ndozie is probably the best keeper in France, and she might be the best keeper in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And that scares the crap out of me.
Wow. Nice. Another little teaser. I'm excited for Arsenal. They drew Häcken, and we just signed one of their former players who her first game that I saw was really good. So there's a lot of potential. I'm excited for that.
She led their team in scoring last season. So she should be very good.
Yes, exactly. So that'll be fun to watch. Cool. And then I think we need to tell our audience who the big rivalries are. Kind of, we've already previewed that with ourselves. It's like, but yeah, there's like one great part of like women's football is that the rivalries are just as big as like on the men's side, and I think you see some of it in the NWSL, but I almost feel like in WSL, it's like, or in England in general, it's like the rivalries are just so huge, the derbies as they call it. Yeah, it's just part of their DNA to like have hatred towards another team and like fully back your own. And so, especially with so many teams being from the same city, like same region, like we were saying, there's 5 teams in London this time. There's several intercity rivalries, and that's always really fun. So I know, well, yeah, the London rivalries, one of the biggest ones is the North London Derby, the NLD, which is Tottenham and Arsenal. I'd say probably, yeah, Arsenal's biggest rival and hater is Tottenham.
Definitely on paper, but also kind of like in the WSL, it is slightly different in that right now it's Chelsea Arsenal in terms of rivalries, because even before they went on their run with Emma, it was a lot of Chelsea kind of scratching and clawing against what was then an almost unbeatable Arsenal side. So that rivalry, it isn't just either about like trophies, like these are the 2 most successful clubs in the league. It's also a very physical match every time these two play. Like I think everyone remembers, you know, the Jonah shove. There's, you know, I think every time we played them, Emma was about to like have convulsions and just have her brain explode from her head on several occasions. But then just even on the pitch, I mean, you had just plenty of like hard tackles, tough moments. I mean, Kerr was always physical that match. I mean, it's always a knockout, drag out type of fight because these two teams know what's on the line in terms of not just 3 points, but it's often like, okay, this is the match that's going to determine first and second. This is going to be the difference in the trophy, because the last few years Arsenal have finished just points away, and a lot of times it came down to how they performed in the matches against Chelsea and in those matches against City. But yeah, I think obviously Tottenham Arsenal are like Tottenham's our biggest rivals, but I think in terms of the league, Chelsea are the ones that we're currently trying to deal with the last decade.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it's a sneaky big rivalry that we don't necessarily talk about because they're not like usually at the top of the table. But the women's edition of the Merseyside Derby,
Oh my gosh,
Everton and Liverpool. Ooh, you want to talk about 2 clubs that generally do not like each other, and are in the same city, and it's basically just those 2 clubs in that city. I think you go back and watch some of those matches, and you will see some very physical play. I'll just put, and I'll keep it at that. And I think both clubs kind of make it a point to, and I think the rivalry matches is kind of where you start to see the women's clubs actually play in the larger men's stadiums. So you'll see the Everton host Liverpool at Goodison Park, or Liverpool host Everton at Anfield. I guess this might be another thing that we want to throw out there. Typically, so none of these teams in the WSL is Kansas City Current. Like none of them have their own like specific stadiums dedicated directly to them. Usually they're playing at the stadium of a League One or lower squad side.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't have the opportunity to even share the stadium with their men's side. They're barred from it, unfortunately.
Right.
So a lot of those will be those rivalry matches usually are those matches that you'll see those at the bigger venues. I know that for the last 3 seasons. The Manchester Derby has been played at either the Etihad or at Old Trash Can. Respectively. So, I can't. It just jumps out.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it just comes out. Not saying.
I have fond memories of Old Trafford, like Chelsea going there on the final day and winning 6-0. That was a
Yeah.
But yeah, we're starting to see, like, for the bigger matches, some of the men's stadiums being used. Chelsea doing the same thing with Stamford Bridge. I was just looking so Kings Meadow, where the women typically play, it's that is for the women and the Chelsea development squad, right? But it kind of speaks to your point where it's not their own dedicated thing, right? It's still kind of a multi-purpose facility type of thing, which, I mean, that's fine, but definitely not seeing, like, with the current, or I would even say Angel City, like what you see with their stadium, and like I would say it's really, that stadium's only used really for them and LAFC, right? So
and
but,
concerts.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Can't forget the concerts. That's the important part.
I think you kind of need a good balance almost of, like, when they play games at the smaller stadiums versus the big ones. I don't know if this is a hot take or whatever, but I have been to some games at the smaller stadiums, and I actually really do enjoy the atmosphere there, because number one, it seems like because it's much smaller, you get very, like, true supporters and, like, fans who are always there, follow the team everywhere kind of thing. But also you're just so close to the action that, like, I mean, you can see, like, every blade of grass on the field. Like, you're that close. You can right, like, face to face with the players almost. It's really cool to see them up close and to, like, kind of hear what they're saying on the pitch too, and kind of be more immersed in the game. Rather, like, it's a totally different experience than being in one of the bigger stadiums. So both definitely have their pros to it, and both have like, things for everyone, I suppose. But I think it really depends on what you want to go to a match for. So I quite like the small ones, and I like the how close you can get with the players, the intimacy with them even after the game. They tend to come up, and, like, they're lovely with the fans usually. So I like that part of it.
Oh, and I would be remiss if we didn't mention the sportsmanship derby. We've been denied of that
Yes.
based off of injury, but I'm very hopeful that we will get a sportsmanship derby in the 2024-2025 season. Sorry, it was just the funniest thing ever to me. Just, I will never forget that. Just if you are unaware, Sam Kerr and Christy Mewis are dating. They are long-term partners, and
they're engaged.
Engaged,
Yeah,
that's right.
First engaged, that's right.
Yeah.
They recently, or when Christie signed midseason for West Ham, I think everybody was very excited. Oh, no, during the 2020 Olympics, which was actually in 2021, when the U.S. beat Australia for the bronze medal match, there was a picture of the two of them. Christie Mewis was kind of holding Sam Kerr, and I think someone who did not know any better basically said, "Look at this, just great sportsmanship." He's like, so that has been the running joke. So the sportsmanship derby is West Ham and Chelsea.
Yes.
Just gals being pals.
Gals being pals. Hopefully we get that one this time.
Yeah.
We were denied that by Sam's ACL injury.
Unfortunately.
Sadly. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else that we need to mention to educate our audience on the league and get them into it?
I know we're doing the transfers and so forth, and I guess we'll talk about each team's off season and kind of what they're expecting in the next episode.
Right. Yeah, I think, yeah, we've pretty much got the basics down. But one thing I do want to cover before we go is the new management of the league now,
Yeah.
and what Marc brought up earlier is so. Actually, why don't you take it away? I feel like you know more about what the change is and what happened with that.
Sure. Yeah. So, so I'm going to actually refer to an interview by Tom Gary. Tom Gary is a journalist in the women's football, women's soccer space, and specifically in England. And this was done with The Guardian. And so Nikki Doucette, who is the chief executive of the new company that is now running the top 2 women's leagues in the country, did a sit down with Tom Gary in The Guardian, and kind of talked about, her kind of like, I guess, her vision, and what to, I guess, kind of communicating to the fans what to expect in terms of, how they plan on growing the league. So kind of, I'm actually still kind of learning this myself, but essentially the 24 teams in the WSL and the Women's Championship, which is the second division, are now stakeholders, and it's all under a new entity that's dubbed NewCo. Or let's see, it's been renamed temporarily to Women's Professional League Limited, WPLL. But that they said that's a temporary name. But yeah, so she kind of it was I would say it was an interesting interview overall. She talked about wanting to bring so she talked about like the team that's her specific leadership team that she's working directly with for other women. Let's see if I can pull them up here. Let's see. Yeah. So with joining Nikki Doucette, the leadership team would be made up of Chief Operating Officer Holly Murdoch, Interim Chief Marketing Officer Ruth Hooper, Chief Football Officer Meryl Van Rijsbroek, I hope I did that correctly, and Chief Revenue Officer Zara Al-Qudsi. And essentially, as I said, they're in charge of the WSL and the championship now. They obviously the main thing is growing the game, trying to figure out how to appeal to fans, and honestly trying to figure out who or what their fan base is. Now Nikki Doucette is a Canadian businesswoman. I believe she came from Nike previously. But it's so at one point in the interview, she said, she was asked how she felt, how is it going in terms of attracting investment, and she actually said it's harder than I thought, which, okay, I mean, like, I appreciate the honesty. It's also a little like, it's maybe not like what you wanted to hear off the bat, but I do, like I said, I do appreciate her honesty. She said, of course, it's different to men's football, which, of course, I'm sure we know that. Now, one of the comments that she made that I think kind of rankled a lot of the core fans and more, longer term fans, if you will. She likened some of the fans or some of the demographic to Swifties, which if you're not familiar, like Taylor Swift fans, right? Which, speaking of someone who's not having great PR,
a rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, right.
She has a very long back.
Yeah. But so yeah, she she mentioned, she talks about like the core fans who come in, who are, there week in, week out, like the diehard fans. She called them arguably the most important, the visionary consumers ahead of all the trends. The word consumers, it's if there's one thing I've learned about English soccer fans, they don't like that. That's not a thing that you say. They just don't see themselves as like. And maybe you can speak to this, Deepti, in terms of like the tribal nature of of a football supporter in England.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's very much in their DNA. Like these guys are born and brought up like to support a team, and like you said, the core supporters, like a consumer makes it sound like everything is just purely based on the money, based on the business. And it seems like Nikki just said, you said she's Canadian, like she hasn't lived in like the English football scene, and she's only bringing a business mind to this, which I feel like maybe on the outside makes a little bit of sense if you want to bring more investment and like grow the league, but in a cultural perspective, perhaps not the best way to go about it, to think of it purely as a business. Like football is such a major cultural aspect of England, and you have to tie that into, like, you have to care about the fans themselves, the ones who have been there from the beginning, and also try to bring in new fans without kind of minimizing them to just like an object that, I don't even know what the right words to like say would be, but yeah, you don't want to minimize how important each and every fan would be by just saying, yeah, they're just one consumer. We need several consumers. Just kind of, we need their money to move on. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Like that's, I think it does come off that way. Certainly it came off that way to a lot of the diehard fans, honestly. A lot of people who have been watching this league week in, week out, cover this league week in, week out. I think, I think that I can understand why there would be maybe some distrust when somebody's like communicating like a business vision, but not, necessarily a community focused vision. So, she went on to talk about, okay, in the middle, you have a fan that's coming through the Lionesses, untethered to the men's game. They're not tribal. They're learning about us. They're trying to find highlights. They love the players, and that's the biggest group that the football ecosystem doesn't know enough. So those are, she goes on to like, that's the people that she's comparing to the Swifties. I think there's a lot in there. I do think it's important to recognize that there are going to be fans who are not tethered to the men's game, right? Like there are fans who are going to be here specifically for the women's game itself, and that kind of works both ways. Like I remember reading when back when I think it was right after the season ended, the last season ended. There was a report that Chelsea were seeking maybe outside investment for their women's team, and maybe even selling a stake of it. There's always a lot going on at Chelsea, right? But one of the things they talked about, so last season, Chelsea women played more games at Stamford Bridge than they had in the past, I think they had they broke their previous attendance record. But not a lot of fans who had season tickets to the men's game, I think it was the metric that they used. Not a lot of those fans attended women's matches. And to be honest, I'm not surprised by that. I would say like when I think of conversations I've had with, buddies of mine, I can think of one who's a Man U fan. And, he's like, yeah, it's great that, I'm glad they started up the women's club and so forth. But it's like he has his routines with the men's team and, like kind of like his routines and his schedules. And then to add another team to that, it's like He's just not going to do that. And like I would say even for us here, like I think there's a special love and connection with the women's game, right? And so it's not necessarily like the men's game, like our love for why we love the teams that we follow, why we got involved with the women's game. It didn't necessarily have to do with the men's game, right? And so I think that makes sense. But but then when she says like they're not tribal, well, they could still be tribal, like I wouldn't necessarily rule that out. And then talks about trying to find highlights, she kind of throws that comment in there. And I think that's the big thing here. Like, if you want to grow the game, you need to grow accessibility. So I think from this sit down, I would have liked to hear a little more about that. In terms of how, what the plan was there, in terms of coverage, in terms of dedicated coverage, before, preview and post-match sort of broadcasting. I think those sort of things help draw fans in. That's where you can do a bit more storytelling. I think that's always an important part of what gets fans, excited about these teams, and gives them a reason to care.
I think. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I think the YouTube, moving to YouTube, and I don't know if that's does that apply to England as well in terms of how you would watch matches there?
No, because it's still gonna be. Isn't it? Am I? Well, sorry. I should let Deepti speak because she's there.
Actually, no. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think. I mean, I even used FA Player last season, so I'm assuming that I would be able to find it on YouTube as well. I think some might be televised, but I think it should be. But I could be wrong. I'll double check on that.
Yeah, I just only asked because I know like England, at least with the Premier League, they have like the whole blackout thing. So I didn't know if they also did that for women's game, but that's a sign.
Might be on DAZN now that I mention it. Sorry. Yeah, it's I think at YouTube DAZN. It's going to be on one of those, I believe.
Okay, but yeah, that's. I think that pretty much made my point. This is step in the right direction. I think is the YouTube move, but I'd like to see more of that. But what were you going to say, Tom?
Oh, I was just going to say, like in reading the piece, I think the thing that kind of disappointed me the most is that like so for those that don't know, Reading disbanded their women's team. They were part of the women's championship, and so the women's championship currently only has 11 teams instead of 12. So I feel like she could have come down harder and kind of said like there is a bar and an expectation for our members to invest in women's football and take this seriously. And while it is tragic that like it's a tragedy that Reading could not make that commitment due to their own financial miscues as a club as a whole, but that should not be the standard. We should not be doing that in 2024. And I think that to me that's where she fell shortest of the mark, because you have that bully pulpit, you need to use it, and you need to let all, I guess it's 23 clubs now know that this is not acceptable, and we will not be standing for that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think my biggest frustration overall with her interview was just there was no substance to anything she said, to be honest. And I think even the fact that she was like, oh, finding investors is hard. It's like, yes, it is hard, but like, what are you doing? What are you aiming for? What is your goal? Like there is more that she could have said, what they're trying to do just to give hope to like the fans that, yeah, we're good. We're the people in charge and we're going to make right with like these leagues and try to grow it as best as we can. And like, I think she kind of missed the mark on that point. which is what has a lot of fans worried. But
Mhm.
like we're early in their ownership, and so good things could come of it, and hopefully they will. But I think this interview as a whole kind of missed the mark for me. And I think the one point I wanted to make about her calling like the in between fans, the ones who come in from like the Lionesses, I honestly I don't really understand her Swiftie comment to be fair, but I think it is important to acknowledge the like quote unquote free agent fans, the ones who are only there to follow certain players and not necessarily have like allegiance to a specific team or location. I think that's really important, and they could do stuff with like having more content on players in general, similar to like how like the Snacks podcast or even like the Rink one. These are players that everyone loves, and like having that side of them has, I feel like, brought more fans into the game as well, who want to watch them now. They learn about them off the pitch. Okay, let's watch them on the pitch. So I think it could go both ways. Trev, got anything to say?
No, I mean, no, y'all said it all. I mean, I'm kind of just between what you and Tom had just said. Honestly, I'm just disappointed that she didn't really say more and kind of say that they were going to do more in terms of holding clubs to standards. I mean, you talk about the championship teams, but like we've kind of briefly mentioned, there are teams in the WSL itself that aren't really upholding the standard of what a league should be. And like I agree with Deepti, like investment is hard, but also again, this is a league that wants to frame itself as not just a top league in the world, but a league that is on par, if not better than the NWSL.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see what's happening in the NWSL right now in terms of their growth and taking advantage of it, and having a team like the Current basically say, hey, we've had so much investment on our side that we are now going to put it back in our organization and build our own everything, facility, stadium, etc. And so I'm just kind of disappointed that she didn't really lay out a plan to get to that stage where, you don't have to pressure these clubs to come to the party because they'll want to, right? Like we need more clubs like a Chelsea, like an Arsenal, like a City who see the value in their women's side and say, you know what? Yeah, like we can bring it all together and try to establish ourselves as an overall great club, period. Yeah. So hopefully, but like, I mean, and again, this is still early days. Maybe, I know public speaking is not for everyone. Like maybe she just kind of, is getting over the nerves of all of it. Who knows? But, hopefully it's a lot better than kind of what we saw.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if NWSL is the best league in the world, because I just read today that apparently Sporting Huelva would have been, able to take out Gotham or Seattle Reign in the final. So
listen, if there's one thing, I don't want to draw the heat on us on the first day, but if there's one thing FCB are gonna do, it's talk shit like that. Like, let's be real.
That wasn't
the president of their league, right?
Yes.
Isn't she like the president of the whole league? Well, that's FCB by proxy. Like that's kind of what I'm saying. Let's just keep it real. Like that. I don't think Sporting whoever could. I don't think Sporting whoever could even hang with the Dash. And like, let's be honest, the Dash are in the muddiest of muds at the moment.
We about to have a whole bunch of player avies, just like
it is what it is. That's fine.
Like the Bon Mati and Pute's player avies are just gonna be like, well, you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the funny thing is like I'm all for like the conversation of a league being better than the NWSL. Like I think that's the kind of disconnect people have sometimes. It's like I'm not just blindly saying it because I'm an American. Like I'm willing to have a league surpass us. I hope to see it. I love that kind of competition, in soccer on a global scale. But like, let's also be honest about the things we say, right? Like if we're gonna have these conversations, let's not get crazy in terms of Sporting can hang with the end of it. Like, come on. Let's not forget that 90% of the national team that is owned the globe in terms of women's soccer plays in the NWSL. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, player Abby's all in my mentions tonight. It's fine. It's fine.
It's like I've been through this.
Joke's
war
on you.
once.
I can't read, so.
Anyway, all right. On that note, next episode, we are going to discuss transfers mainly, kind of giving a quick season preview. The season starts September 20th, is it?
22nd, I believe, right? Or 20th for everyone. Is that the
20?
First match?
The
20th.
First match, Chelsea. Who you guys play, Mark?
Villa. I believe it is.
Ooh.
Yeah, that weekend. So in 2 weeks, basically, season starts. So we're gonna give a season preview, big transfers, kind of big players to look out for, any other big storylines.
Yeah, the next one is going to be into the weeds of it all. It's going to be fun. That's going to be fun.
Into the weeds.
Yeah.
We're gonna have some. I'm gonna be talking about some heartbreak. Viv me to
Oh,
mom.
no. Oh, no.
We'll get to that.
I mean, is it heartbreak, or is it unrequited love, or is it a dream come true for me? I mean, who knows?
Who's to say? We'll find
Who's
out.
to say?
Indeed. All right, but yeah, make sure you guys tune in. Thanks for listening. Y'all want to shout out your
Oh yeah,
Twitter,
everybody tell
socials?
Yeah, socials, yeah. Is any social media platform that I participate on, you can find me at Thom Bomb 816.
I am on Twitter at Treb Tracy, so feel free to flood the mentions. It's fine.
You can currently find me on Twitter and Instagram at Nicholsodian. It's my last name, Nichollsodon.
And I am mostly on Twitter. I have an Instagram, but I don't really use it. I am at AeroAstroFC. That's AeroAstrofC. Thanks for tuning in. This was the 12.
Ooh, episode 1. Let's go.